Welcome to LaunchCode with Mike and Paul, two industry veterans who will take you on their exciting adventure building their software company from the ground up. Get ready for cutting-edge tech insights, candid stories, and a whole lot of fun along the way. Welcome to their amazing adventure. Welcome to LaunchCode.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of LaunchCode. My name is Paul Schneider. With me, as always, is my business partner and friend, Mike Dillon. Mike, how are you?
Hey, coming to you from Spain. So how could it be wrong or bad?
You are a world traveler, my friend. Well, today we have a little bit of a different episode. We want to highlight really one of our favorite nonprofits, UStrive. It's a nonprofit dedicated to improving higher education access, student success, and career mentoring, and really all while using technology in continuously innovative ways. So with us today, we have Michael Carter, and he's the founder and CEO of UStrive. Michael has had a fascinating career that includes building and funding nonprofits, advancing equal opportunities and diversity initiatives, as well as being an investor in new technologies. And in fact, UStrive, their foundational technology is actually part of a separate company. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Nice to be on. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Well, maybe we could start out and you could tell us a little bit about UStrive's mission and really what led you to create UStrive.
Absolutely. So UStrive started in my dorm room, as sometimes ideas do. And it started based on a really simple idea, which was helping underserved students apply to college, get financial aid, get scholarships, using current college students at the start as the mentors. Personally, my mom was the first in her family to go to college, came from a Mexican-American kind of blue collar working class family. And I called my grandpa Papa. My Papa and Grandma, they worked 2 jobs each to save enough money to try to send her to college. And then she worked while she was in college. But she was the first in our family to graduate. And, I remember her growing up, I always told my Papa that everyone in America has an equal opportunity. And he called me a menso, which in Spanish means a moron. And it wasn't until I transferred to a public school, my first public school, my junior year of high school, that I saw that opportunity really is not equal. At our public school, we only had one counselor for about every 1,000 students, versus, at the private school, I think it was one for every 100 or 200. And so you just didn't have the same resources and guidance. So at any rate, I really loved applying to college. I know that's weird, but I did. Applied to way too many schools and, helped some friends who were interested in applying to college but didn't think they could afford to go. And I had read that, at all these top schools, they had full financial aid if your family made less than a certain amount a year. So told some friends, they ended up getting into great schools. I was fortunate to get a full merit scholarship to WashU in St. Louis and came up with this idea to help underserved students be mentored by us in the scholarship program. And I'll never forget, I emailed the scholarship program director the summer before my freshman year. And maybe 2 months into my freshman year, she'd helped me launch a pilot program with a high school in Wellston, Missouri, where I think the average family income was something like $11,000 a year, $11,000 a year. Interestingly, Wellston's right next to Ferguson, Missouri, which was in the news quite a bit. But is actually much more low income. So we started working our first year there with juniors, and this school had been unaccredited by the state. So every student had the option to flee the district once you're unaccredited, and most kids did. So you only had about 30 kids per grade level in this public high school. So that year we worked with all the juniors And out of the seniors we didn't work with, only 1 out of 30 went to 4-year college. The next year, of those juniors we'd worked with their junior and senior year, 24 out of 27 went to 4-year college. And so, at first, me and my friends, we kind of felt like the new Mother Teresa. It was like, oh my God, like, look at this miracle. Um, but like, you couldn't help but think like, we help people fill out forms and, figure out where to go and do the financial aid maze. But, they had earned the right to go to these schools. It was just, I couldn't help but think how many of the 29 the year before had earned the right and just didn't, go because nobody helped them do this last mile step. And so I got obsessed with this. And so, as with a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm sure you guys can relate, once you're obsessed, it was all I would talk about. And so if you were my friend, you either got involved or you stopped talking to me. And both happened. So at any rate, so we ended up scaling to like 9 different states across the country while I was in college. Committed to do this full-time after college, hired our first full-time employee when I was a junior in college, which was honestly a scary time. It was 08, 09. So, kind of like what startups are going through now, it was even worse then. So it was really good litmus tests for, did you have the resolve? I think I got well over 1,000 no's before I got a yes while trying to fundraise. So at any rate, to speed you up, what happened next is we kept scaling it after I graduated college. I think we ended up at like 15 states where we had regional hubs where, we'd go into high schools near a university where we set up chapters and mentored students. And then in 2013, we were featured on CNN Heroes. And there was a woman who worked for the Albertsons Family Office Foundation, not the company, but the family that had owned Albertsons. They had a family foundation, or they do have a family foundation focused on education in Idaho. And anyway, this lady who worked in their family office, she was at the gym running on a treadmill, saw the CNN Heroes piece, and cold emailed us and said, we want to give you a lot of money to scale across the state of Idaho and help more Idaho, young people go on to something after high school. It's called the Go On campaign. And Idaho is so rural that you couldn't do this work just in person. You needed a virtual mechanism to reach students because sometimes the nearest college to high school was 5 hours away. And so that's how we ended up pioneering virtual mentoring back in 2013 when it was not in vogue as it was during and post-COVID. And we saw the results were better than our in-person results, actually. The matches, the mentors, and mentees were more optimal. So we doubled down and ended up scaling virtual mentoring all across the country. And then in 2022, we expanded all across the world. So today we've reached over 2 million young people in all US states, territories, and 180 or so different countries. We've expanded, to not just help kids with applying to college, but also with persisting in college and with getting a career where they can earn a living wage. And interestingly, we also have changed how we get mentors. So we do have over 100 college partners. We still have college students who sign up to be mentors to help high school kids, but we also have college students who sign up to get a career mentor now. But actually, the main way we get mentors now is through corporate partnerships. So actually, the way I met Mike is when he was at Deloitte. And Deloitte was actually our first corporate partner and one of our largest corporate partners. Thousands of their folks have signed up to be mentors on our platform. Other companies such as American Express, in addition to engaging lots of their colleagues as mentors, they offer being a virtual mentor as a credit card member offering. So they'll actually pay credit card members fees, background check fee, to be a mentor on our platform. And so, yeah, that's kind of how the journey's gone. And our big, hairy, kind of audacious goal is to democratize social capital for everyone. So the idea here is you can use technology to augment instead of replace humanity by using technology to bring two real human beings together. And as the mentor gets to know their mentee, what we've seen a lot is mentors will help open their network, their social capital, and help their mentees access opportunity, well beyond just, reviewing their personal statement or a resume. But there has to be some, connection for someone to want to open their network. So at any rate, that is what we're all about. And I feel really blessed that, I happened into this in college and have gotten to kind of live my mission. Now, I was always used to being the young guy in the room. Now at 36, not always the case, but I feel really blessed to have gotten to, spend my professional career, on this journey.
Yeah.
Oh, wait till you're my age. It'll never be the case. Unless I'm listening to old folks song thing, that possibly. But, one of the things, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you, Michael, is and certainly the draw for the cause was larger than just my personal background, but it was motivational. Is that I was raised by a single teenage mom who didn't go to college.
Oh,
wow. Her parents had, but one of them did pass away, and one of them was pretty much early on was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I don't want to go into that, but I didn't really have, so similar to, but not quite the same and not as dramatic. I was a first generation college student in my household. And the only thing that really helped me, and I look back on it, is that, my mom didn't make a lot of money, but she put us in a good neighborhood and spent a lot of money on rent. And the peer group I had, for the most part, not everybody, but there was a large amount of them that they didn't think about anything else but going to college. It was not a, if I'm going to go, it's like, where am I going to go? And so, and later on, I got a graduate degree in education at UCLA and studied at they call it HARI, which is the Higher Ed Research Institute. And they talk about what is the key success once you're in college. And it's also your peer group, not your socioeconomic background, so I found all that really fascinating as well, right? That you can overcome a lot of things, but it's your peer group really that will push you forward and help you. So anyway, I digress, but one of the things that I want to mention, an amazing impact that you've had, and certainly I've been, so grateful to be a part of and assisting UStrive wherever I can. So, but I'm curious, you've helped over 2 million students, and you mentioned this a little bit already, that technology has changed, and you saw the benefit of technology early on. But how have you seen technology evolve of late, and how's that assisted your efforts?
great question, Mike. And thanks for sharing that personal story. I did not know you were the first in your family to go to college and raised by a single mom. It's interesting. We find a lot of mentors, who come to us have these personal experiences that, by the way, when they open up to their students about it, talking about a peer group, like it's what, we hear over and over from students, like having that mentor believe in them makes all the difference. It just takes one person. I mean, I don't know, if I think about my career, it took a few specific people opening doors who had, some influence and power to, even make this idea happen. So that's an amazing story. In terms of technology today, so, of course, there's all this buzz about AI. I think for us, AI is really important. Our CTO, Dwayne McLeish, who also has a really interesting story from Jamaica. I got a full ride to University of Kentucky in track and field, studied computer science, ended up been CTO of a lot of companies. The last one was a company he took from like 0 to 80 million ARR. But he has a similar, story of like, what education meant to him coming from Jamaica to the US. And at any rate, he's been working really hard, him and our technical team, on how to integrate AI to create more meaningful relationships. So what I mean by that is we take, all the conversations we see between students and mentors, and we're like, okay, what are the trends that make someone more successful as a relationship, which, of course, we define as more interactions with each other. And what we want to do is, if a student or mentor, is speaking with the other and the student has a question about X, Y, or Z, use AI to help, generate in real time tips or answers you could give back that keep the conversation going. Because what we've learned with mentoring is it's not as obvious as dating in terms of like what your end goal is. Like people want a mentor. Like with one of our partners, when they offer, mentoring to their user base, I think the opt-in is like 70% who are like, yeah, I want a virtual mentor. So people like this idea of a mentor, but they don't really like know per se, especially a 17, 18-year-old, okay, what can this mentor do for me? And on the other end, the mentor doesn't really know always, okay, where do I go with the student? Like I remember when we first launched virtual mentoring, oh, it was the funniest thing. We do this little launch party. The first student chooses the first mentor because on our platform, the students get to choose who they want. The student wrote to the mentor, hi. The mentor wrote back, hey. And that was it. And we were like, oh no. Like,
that isn't exactly a successful speed date.
Yeah.
No. We were like, okay, I'm sitting here watching this. I'm like, oh, like we gotta add like curriculum, which we have. But at any rate, I think AI is gonna help folks, at least in our use case, to interact more kind of in a seamless way with one another and help students and mentors understand more how to keep the conversation going and build an authentic relationship, such that the mentors will want to use their social capital because they feel a connection with this young person. On the other hand, like I don't think AI is going to replace humans, at least in our space, because like AI doesn't have a network, like, I mean, I don't know, like a mentor of mine once said, like, what's your favorite part of being an entrepreneur? And I said, human beings. And he said, and what's your least favorite part? And I said, human beings. Because at the end of the day, like what are organizations, even the biggest organizations, they're made up of human beings who make the decisions. And I don't think human beings who are making the decisions are going to give up the decision making of who to hire, who to promote. I don't think they're going to give that up to AI. I think AI will make jobs more efficient, but I think folks who have influence and power in a given organization, they're not going to give up their ability to choose talent and promote talent or, hire, fire, etc. And so as a result, I think having a human to human connection with someone who has a network who can open it up for a young person and build a real relationship is really important and not something AI can replace. And frankly, the other thing our virtual mentoring shows is that mentors are looking for like purposeful connection. Just dealing with AI, I don't know, Mike, you tell me, I don't think you would have found it as compelling as like dealing with real young people from all over who were looking, for some guidance. And so I think that technology is a great tool to, augment the human relationship. versus replace it.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I agree with you. But you also touched a little bit upon entrepreneurship, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about your personal journey, particularly your startup journey. So maybe you can tell us, you know, how you grew your nonprofit actually and your for-profit companies, and even like initial funding. Like how did that all work?
So on the nonprofit, like I said, I started fundraising in 08, 09. So it was really brutal. I got 1,000 no's before I got a yes for any kind of, kind of 5-figure donation. um, and I'll never forget the first 5-figure donation was from this couple who are like family now to me. Or our family, basically, I consider them family. But it was Bob and Connie Lurie, who had used to own the San Francisco Giants. He saved the Giants from moving. And I remember I went out to lunch with Connie Lurie. I was interning at Google. And so I said, hey, want to come have lunch at Google? And I pitched her on this idea, I don't know, I was like 19 or something. And, she's like, so what do you want? And I'm like, well, I need some startup capital for this nonprofit. And they, they're very generous philanthropists. They have a family foundation. And so she said, okay. And I said, and I need you to be on my board. And she was like, well, who is on your board? And I didn't understand at the time, I mean, the Luries were on like, very prestigious boards. And I'm like, well, I'm on the board and you could be too. she's like, oh, she's like, no, I got you. She's like, we got to fill this out. I'm like, what do you mean fill this out? And she's like, oh, let's have lunch next week. I'm like, okay, I'll come back to the Googleplex. And I'll never forget, she brought this like, ringed binder of like all of her connections in the San Francisco Peninsula. And we just went through, she's like, you should call so-and-so and so-and-so. And so, she really helped me on the nonprofit side, like, get it going. And then from there, I love cold emails. So we had actually cold emailed my first head of development. Like we cold emailed all of our alumni networks. So we got some donors through that. My first head of development went to Amherst College, and the guy who ran Deutsche Bank US at the time was an Amherst College grad, Seth Waugh, and he passed this on to their corporate foundation, who ended up giving us a 6-figure check. And then from there it built, and we got connected to the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, who ended up giving us our first 7 figures. I think I was like 20 or 21. And I'll never forget, remember this was still in-person sessions, but I'll never forget the program officer there, who's a dear friend, Todd Penner now. He came to the session and they were just about to cut a check, and the last step was to see a session, and or they may have cut the check. I can't remember. I think just about. And I'll never forget, he's like at the session and he's talking to me, and I'm wearing a Strive shirt like all the mentors and students. And he's like, so when does Mr. Carter arrive? And I was like, I'm Michael Carter. And he was like, oh, he's like, oh my God, you're like very young. So, it took folks making a bet, but I'll never forget, to get that first, money in, I would just go around to folks with a list of big philanthropists and be like, hey, who do you know on this list? And I got a ton of no's before I got a yes. At first it was demoralizing, and then I thought, oh my God, there's like 1% of the country at the time, I don't know, 300 million people in the country, so like 3 million people who have a lot of resources that could donate. So then I would just look at it as, okay, like 2,999,995 left or something. And so I was trying to be more glass half full. On the for-profit side, it was interesting because we set up a tech company to do virtual mentoring to build a platform. We had one angel investor early on for a very small amount. And then we just bootstrapped it. So we just we just focused on, generating revenue, and then reinvesting that revenue to continue to build. When when we first bootstrapped, a lot of friends who had taken a lot of venture thought that was kind of nuts, because we did have talks to, with different folks who were interested in putting in more institutional capital. But my view was just kind of like, I'd rather spend my time with like customers who, when you take, if you like venture, it's good for some businesses where you really need to pour gasoline and grow really quickly. But I think a lot of times it can really screw up a business when you're early and trying to find product market fit and trying to build a customer base, because it doesn't allow you to, or what I should say is it's a lot harder to lose your own money and run a negative than to spend other people's money quickly and then try to go back to them for more. Yeah. So I've always been a big believer in bootstrapping, running things in a profitable EBITDA, or not even EBITDA, just cash flow positive way, because EBITDA can be manipulated, you'll learn. So yeah, I mean, that's how the for-profit has grown, and it's been a great journey as we've built both out.
That's great. Fantastic. Hey, kind of following those lines a little bit. So I'm a supporter and contributor to several nonprofits and charities, including, and I'll do a selfish plug, Fresh Help Maui, which is helping Maui rebuild after the fires. It's still going to be a long rebuilding process for them. But anyway, so the question, knowing with that background in myself, the whole contributor environment, and have you seen macroeconomic conditions change and impact both nonprofit and frankly for-profit companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on the nonprofit side, it's kind of interesting because obviously I think nonprofit giving is a little reactive to people's stock portfolios and donor advised funds and such. And so, certainly you saw a dip in like 2022 when the market went down, and somehow the market's at an all-time high now. So it's kind of interesting. And so you see philanthropy, kind of following the market a bit. What you do see more and more, I don't know, like my experience with philanthropy is more and more folks are looking to use philanthropy for R&D, like research and development, like funding a new idea. That's like a very, like Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, they're so good at, it's almost like venture philanthropy, where they're like, okay, we're funding like net new projects, not your ongoing costs, with the idea being we'll fund your research and development, and then you have to find a way to make it sustainable if there's a market for this new idea you have. And so I've seen a lot of philanthropists start to go more that way than, the traditional kind of, I give every year the same amount to an org. I think both approaches have their validity, but it's interesting to me that a good amount are shifting more towards, look, I want to fund your R&D, and the market will show if this is needed, then you'll be able to sustain it through fee for service or government, et cetera. On the for-profit side, because in my other life, I am a investor in a number of companies in technology. And it's very interesting because you see, companies that were disciplined, ran near cash flow positive, kept money in reserve, are weathering the storm. But there's a lot of companies that raised a lot of money that have gone under or are very distressed, because they didn't have the discipline to run a cash flow positive business, and instead thought, growth at all costs was going to work. And to me, it always felt a bit like Russian roulette, to be honest. Like maybe it works, but like, if you don't hit the macroeconomic cycle perfectly, which if you haven't sold now, you certainly have not hit it perfectly, given, it's very interesting. Stock market's at a whole all-time high, but private markets for startups are, super difficult. I wouldn't say as difficult as like '08, '09, but like or in 10 or 11, but certainly getting there. And I think the hard part is there's a lot of people who didn't go through '08, '09, who are young entrepreneurs who were only used to this very kind of cheap money cycle, grow at all costs. And so it's very hard to change that discipline. Um, Personally, I think capital, like cost of capital, like capital should have a cost. Like, um, so I think it's a sobering moment to show, where is their value, versus where is it just like a subsidized novelty idea.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and similar to the economic changes, tech is changing dramatically too. And we talked about AI earlier and the things that it doesn't do or can't do, but it is something that is obviously being adopted more and more. How are you seeing it being used by UStrive to really just better assist prospective students that are out there that you're serving?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, AI has a number of applications. One, it creates efficiencies internally. So we're better able to deliver on our mission, more efficiently, frankly, especially on the technical side. AI can do a lot of legwork. It's not perfect. Like certainly needs a lot of human oversight still, but it's getting, I mean, it's amazing how quickly it learns, right? It's fascinating, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like someone told me like it's like a slowly then suddenly. Like everybody said it would be really good, and then suddenly it is. But everybody kind of ignores it until it's super useful.
Yeah.
So look, internally very valuable. Externally, with dealing with students, I think there's a lot of value in prompting students and mentors, like I mentioned earlier, for conversations. There's a lot of value for us in, as students have questions, that typically our user support team would answer. If we don't know the answer, asking ChatGPT and getting kind of really thoughtful, long answers. And then, making sure those are correct, by the way, and then helping integrate them into our curriculum has been really interesting. There is this like push, for like chat bots only, to help students. And I think there's a place for like AI chatbots in this space, certainly. But I would just go to like when you have an issue with like an airline or a hotel or your credit card, like, and you call and you're talking to the phone robot or they tell you to message online, the chat bot. Um, I don't know anyone I know who enjoys that. In fact, everyone I know just yells agent or presses 0 for operator to try to get a human, so they can explain their frustration. And so I think like what I'm getting at is I think AI chatbots can solve like simple questions like, hey, like on this specific form, should I put this here, period? But a bigger question like, does my personal statement get at the essence of who I am? Like, I think a human, beyond just a social capital network, a fellow human is going to be able to hear your story and empathize and understand you. So that when you write your personal statement or you're trying to sum up your resume, they're going to be able to detect things and think through how the human analyzing your application on the other end is going to think about it in a way that I think, at least now, AI has not mastered.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then there's also this struggle, students as they're going through, and you have that part of the program where that you can help them through their college career, the empathizing with the struggles and the challenges. So, sort of picking up on part of this, in higher education in general, there's more questioning of the value and the ROI and partly because of the costs are so extreme now for higher education. And so when I think about UStrive evolving, and maybe you're already doing this, do you consider recommending other options aside from higher ed to prospective students that may include trade schools, or other forms of education that lead to something aside from a 4-year degree?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. So absolutely. I mean, at our scale now, having, reach into the millions, like we have such different kinds of young people. We have, I like to say, we have young folks who go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, etc., on full rides. We also had a young woman who ended up going to beauty school, and her mentor was an Amex Platinum card member who owns like 30 salons. and and to me, like every young person's dream and goals are valid. It's just our job to help them achieve whatever their dreams are. I think, sometimes there's this kind of I think sometimes in academia or institutional foundations, there can be some elitism around, 4-year versus 2-year versus trade school. And to me, it's like, look, like to make our country work, like, I mean, you need plumbers, you need electricians, you need
Yeah.
police people, you need doctors,
AI
you need
isn't going to
lawyers, like,
fix my toilet.
no. I mean, I think the average plumber now makes 6 figures. So, like,
Yeah.
to me, but that's not to say too, I'm not in the camp that's like, okay, let's just like train all poor people to be like plumbers and
No.
electricians. Like, to me, it's like whatever someone's dream is and what they're passionate about, you know, that's what we should be helping them get to. And by the way, if they don't yet know what they're passionate about, but have some interest in different areas, hence our career mentoring and being exposed to different mentors in different careers, that's great too. Like let them explore. But our big goal is just to make sure they have, a living wage career where they can, where these young people can, you know, um, sustain themselves and their families, and break the cycle of poverty. Um, and, it is interesting, Mike, because, I think foundations are starting to get more flexible, but, we for the longest time have been open to any kind of trade school, 2-year, et cetera. And we had a number of funders and stuff who were like, well, we don't do that. We're only focused on 4-year or this or that. And our issue is just at our scale. It's like, I can't, we can't just pigeonhole people, and we don't want to exclude either. I mean, the power of scale, frankly, is that you can find that young woman who wants to be the next Paul Mitchell and go to beauty school, and that young woman then picked her mentor who owns all those salons. I mean, it's that is the beauty, is there's something for everyone, which frankly is the benefit of technology. Is you couldn't do this without technology. You couldn't get this kind of scale and optimal matches for folks.
Yeah. You mentioned a really good point. I'm glad you said it. So I read the trade school issue, but the danger is always, I'm taking somebody from a disadvantaged background and I'm channeling into a place that they're not getting. They may get quality of life, but maybe I limited their opportunity to be something that especially if they don't know what their aspirations are. College kind of opens that door, right? Where, I can go on to graduate school, I can become a doctor, I can become a lawyer, if that's something I really develop a passion for. So
Right.
really appreciate that, the clarification, because there is certainly a danger there, but there's also, there might be somebody that is dead set. I've always been really good at X, Y, or Z mechanics or et cetera. And do I need to go
Yes.
mechanical engineering degree, or do I go at trade school? Those are, they're not straightforward answers either. It's always a lot of dynamics and factors that weigh in, and it's challenging to be a mentor because you don't want to misguide somebody or limit them in any way. So
100%, Mike. And like, it's like, I think we got to be careful, especially in K-12. Like, just because a student isn't book smart at school, everybody has talents and passions. It's like how you channel those, sometimes the most successul people were some of the worst in school, in like traditional school. So,
Oh yeah.
like, yeah, and that's why we like to, just keep everybody's options open and react to what, the mentee is passionate about. Which, by the way, I think generative AI is going to help us guide mentors in that journey on how to do that. Because sometimes it's hard, because you have your own, we all have our own biases.
Yeah.
Based on our own life experience.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your role, and we talked about one of the challenges, right? We talked about actually several: funding, doing the right thing. What challenges right now are first and foremost in your mind and keep you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've scaled pretty crazily on the mentee side. So for us, it's funny, right? Because it's very much like any two-sided marketplace, right? Like, I remember when Uber first came out, I had just heard about it from a friend, and it was, I don't know, it was like 2013 or something. And I tried it in San Francisco, and it took like 50 minutes to get I was like, this will never work. And I deleted the app and was like, whatever. Because at the time, right, starting out, they didn't have enough drivers. And so, what's really interesting about any online marketplace, right, like car sharing, drivers, riders, or mentoring, mentors, mentees, is you have a dynamic marketplace, right? And as we've seen student demand just almost triple over the past 3 years, what keeps me up at night is getting more and more mentors to meet that mentee demand. Like, granted, our mentors on average take on 4 students, but a mentor can choose how, if they want to keep themselves available to be chosen, or just, stop being in the mentoring pool and they're good with his, however many kids they're mentoring. So to be honest, that's my number one, kind of thing that keeps me up at night is fulfilling that supply of mentors, which is interesting because the seesaws, sometimes, like I remember when we were first starting, we had too many mentors and not enough students. So it's it's interesting how you do learn. The more scale you have, and the more excitement you have, and the more successes you have, the more challenges you then have to solve, which is really fun, actually, because you're constantly like having to learn and iterate and try out new solutions to problems.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the biggest thing that keeps me up at night. I think the other big thing that keeps me up at night is just creating more moments between mentors and mentees that are authentic, meaningful relationship building, so that more and more mentors will open their networks to these young people. We've had mentors that, like, there's one gentleman, he's amazing, at American Express, who mentors so many young people, and he ended up giving one of his mentees from Nepal. She's from Nepal, goes to college in the US. but he helped her get an internship last summer at American Express. And now she's coming back again this summer. I think she's there now. And those kinds of moments, just, it makes me feel really blessed. And it makes me feel like my papa and grandma are smiling down, being like, okay, we like started this by helping your mom go to college as the first in our family to go, and you're continuing and paying it forward and creating more opportunity for other people, like they did for our family.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, that's the other thing that keeps me up at night is creating those kind of meaningful interactions that lead to these incredible moments of folks using their social capital for good. It's it's interesting because if you think about it with social capital, like a lot of times using your social capital, if you have a lot of social capital, it actually really doesn't cost you anything. It makes you feel good, but it's not actually, but it's like, what's going to compel you to use that social capital? It's a real relationship with someone you believe in, which I think we have the opportunity to create with this platform at scale more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. There's nothing better than helping somebody out. It doesn't cost anything, but it does make you feel fantastic. Michael, this has really been a great episode. It's just so nice to hear what you're doing with UStrive. And I guess the last question I'll ask, and probably the most important question, is how best can our listeners get involved with UStrive?
Oh, yes. Great question. If you're interested, our website is UStrive, the letter U, STRIVE, strive.com. You can sign up, write us to be a mentor. If your company is already a partner, you can sign up right away. But yeah, you can go to ustrive.com or ustrive.org. Again, the letter U, STRIVE.org. And you can find out more about us there and contact us. And we'd invite anyone listening to please do so, because we could certainly, use more and more folks who want to help talented young people from across the world to achieve their dreams.
Love it. Love it. Well, Michael, thank you again for taking the time to be on this podcast today. This has really been an enlightening episode, and I know and I'm speaking for Mike too, have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. So this has been another great episode of LaunchCode. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
You have been listening to LaunchCode with Mike and Paul. You can find all episodes on your favorite podcast services and on our website at elastiforce.com. In addition, if you have software development or Oracle or PeopleSoft managed service needs, visit us at elastiforce.com and let's see how we can help.